Hello, I'm Doug Chafee, Vice Chairman of the Orange County Board of Supervisors and 4th District Supervisor. On behalf of the Orange County Board of Supervisors, I'd like to welcome you to the release of the 2020 Orange County Hate Crimes Report. We're committed to reducing the incidence of hate in our county. All people should live free from discrimination, harassment, and violence based on race, religion, ethnicity, gender, sexual orientation, disability, or any other arbitrary aspect of their being. It's unfortunate that Orange County has experienced a rise in incidents of hate over the past year. Our communities have faced many challenges due to the COVID-19 pandemic, and unfortunately, some individuals continue to suffer from incidents of hate. The Orange County Human Relations Commission is responsible for seeking out the causes of tension and conflict, discrimination and intolerance, and working to eliminate those causes. Now more than ever, the Commission's role is vital in our county. In closing, I would like to personally thank the members of the Orange County Human Relations Commission for their dedication to eliminate hate-related crimes and incidents in our county, and to make sure all of us can live free from any kind of discrimination.
Good morning, everybody. Thank you for joining us today. Welcome to our 2020 Hate Crimes Report Release event. My name is Norma Lopez, and I am the Executive Director for the Human Relations Commission. We would love for folks to, as we get started, type in the chat where, your name, the city you're in, and the order that you are representing, just so we know who is in the room and we can all say hi to each other. Today we have a jam-packed program for everybody. We're really excited about our speakers and our panelists, and we're happy that you're here to learn about the trends for 2020 and how do we work together to address hate in Orange County. Thank you, everybody, for attending today. I'd like to thank our speakers, DA Todd Spitzer, UCI's Vice Chancellor, Dr. Douglas Haynes. We have Human Relations Commission Chair, John Matsuba, and we also have the Executive Director for the Center of Asians for Action with us, Priscilla Juan. So you also are able to see the Human Relations Commission team, Maureen Databoy, who's gonna help us here with tech, and then our hate crime prevention coordinator, Mi Wen. Today we're going to do a presentation of the 2020 hate crime data that was collected. We will discuss the subject with subject matter experts and really kind of speak about how hate impacts our communities and what we could do about it. So without further ado, I am going to hand it over to DA Spitzer so he's able to do an overview of the cases they saw in 2020.
Well, thank you very much and good morning. And I'm hoping the Vice Chair will be able to log in. Supervisor Doe, some of you know, contracted COVID, and so he's not able to be with us. But as a former member of the Board of Supervisors, I just want you to know how important this report and the Commission's work is to the Orange County Board of Supervisors. Many of you know that former Supervisor Sean Nelson, I grabbed him when he termed off the Board of Supervisors. He's my chief assistant. And so all the work we did when we were on the Board of Supervisors with respect to the hate crime report and all the work that the Commission is doing, we're continuing that work as much as we can from our vantage point and the lane we're in the District Attorney's Office. You're going to hear about the report this morning, and I had a chance to review it in preparation of my comments this morning. And I have to be very frank with you. I'm very upset about it. Hate crime is up. It's up year over year. It's been up now for several years in a row, and it's completely unacceptable. I mean, we all know that no one is born to hate. You don't come out of the womb hating. It's a learned behavior. It's based upon your environment and your upbringing and the influences around you, which means we can change it. Children have to be taught to hate. They're taught to hate strangers, people they've never met. It's generally out of ignorance and naivete, but they make those judgments based upon people's skin color, who they love, the relationships they're in, or where they come from. The beauty of our county, and I think we always need to remember it, is our diversity. It's our diversity. Our beauty is our differences, not the fact we are different. And as the elected DA now, I don't judge who you love. That's not my place. We're all free to love whoever we want, to be in whatever relationship we want to be in, to engage in whatever identity we have for ourselves, who we want to associate with. And my job as DA, though, is to judge who you hate. And so when you commit a crime out of hate, and I can prove it beyond a reasonable doubt, then we'll prosecute you to the fullest extent of the law. Because when you see this hate crime report and you see the charts, my job is to make sure that people understand there's consequences for a hate incident. I can't prosecute. You're going to understand that better later. Hate crimes, we don't tolerate that in this county. And we've got to change these numbers, and people have to know there's going to be a very, very strong enforcement mechanism if you engage in a hate crime. It's not lip service, it's a fact. In my first 2 years as DA, we prosecuted more hate crimes in the last 2 years, 2.5 years, than in the prior 25 years. I'm not holding that up as a badge of honor. I'm telling you that that's not a good thing. But I'm telling you that people are way more aware because of the good work we're doing about how to report what an incident is, what a crime is, and your police and law enforcement agencies are much better trained and much better educated, and they know it's our highest priority in the district attorney's office. So aggressive is not even close to describing, how seriously we take these crimes. And let me give you a couple examples. So example one, a man attacked an elderly Asian couple taking their evening walk in a park in Orange, and we're prosecuting that case. Example two, a man threw rocks at a Korean mother and her 6-year-old child who was in the back seat as they drove by. That happened in Fullerton, shattering their windshield. She had the wherewithal to call the police, and he was arrested. Example three, a hater who attacked a transgender woman with a skateboard in Costa Mesa. We prosecuted him and we successfully convicted him. All these crimes are prosecuted by my office. In fact, I was so concerned with the recent vile rhetoric and violence, especially in the last year we've seen against Asian Americans, but Blacks have been systematically targeted in Orange County, just like people who are perceived of being from the Middle East or are from the Middle East. LGBTQ are always targeted and always singled out. And that's why when I say that phrase, I don't judge who you love, I judge who you hate. I want everybody to know that you are free in this county to express yourselves. And if people want to attack you, there's going to be consequences for that. So last May, we took this so seriously, I created a special hate crime unit in the district attorney's office. And I'm very proud to have them here with us today, monitoring this conversation, is the person that leads that unit, Assistant District Attorney Barbara Kim. We have Deputy District Attorneys William Billy Haw, David McMurrin, and Deborah Kwan, as well as DA investigators Troy Hernandez and Rob Gallagher. These people, these excellent prosecutors and investigators and their administrative support staff, not only prosecute hate crime, they work with law enforcement to help them recognize the elements we need to prosecute a hate crime. We oftentimes get police reports where in the field, a police officer is taking a report and they don't sufficiently elicit enough information from a victim or a witness to help us effectively prosecute that crime. So we are out there training so that these officers take better reports and we can make a more informed decision whether or not we're going to file those charges. So listen, instead of coming together as a nation in the midst of this worldwide pandemic and civil unrest, hate's dominated the conversation in our country. I just gave a talk on 9/11, how after 9/11, we came together as a country. 20 years later, we're as disparate and as far apart as we've ever been. It's not acceptable. And we are suffering the consequences of hate here in Orange County and across the nation. We're all watching it. Asians were blamed for the coronavirus. Blacks were blamed for civil unrest. Members of the LGBTQ community were targeted as well, but they're always targeted. They've always suffered, irrespective of what we've gone through in the last 2 years. So the list goes on and on. I want to talk about, I don't call him a gentleman. I want to talk about this person. This is Tyson Mayfield. And this is an important dude, okay? In the sense that he's wearing this straitjacket because he's a violent white supremacist. And he attacked an 8-month pregnant African-American woman who was just waiting at a bus stop in Fullerton. And he threatened to drop her baby. She was pregnant. She also was showing. And so he doesn't believe that African-Americans should have children, obviously. He's a hater, and he hates Black people. He hates Jews, and he hates everybody else, okay? He's a white supremacist. He's got a swastika tattooed here on his chest. He's your poster child for hate. And she was able to get away from him after she pepper sprayed him. In 2017, so before he did that, he attacked a Turkish man and hit him multiple times in the face and yelled a racial slur at him because he was angry that this victim did not have a lighter to help him with his cigarette. But that was probably just a ruse so he could beat the crap out of this guy. He then made racist comments towards a woman and her boyfriend at a gas station when they declined to give him any money. He hurled racial epithets at them. He punched the male victim repeatedly in the face. That victim had to get 8 stitches. This is a violent and racist man. So when we had this present case of the woman at the bus stop in front of Judge Robbins, he's a retired judge, or recently retired, I believe, but he's back on the bench. But he was sitting in North Court making offers. And even though Mayfield was looking at 38 years to life, because this guy needs to go away as long as possible, okay? He has no business living in a free society. The judge offered him 2 years over our objection. I went to court and I went into chambers with the judge, and I took him the human relations hate crime report from 2017, 18, who knows what year. But I said, Judge, do you pay attention to what's going on in the county you live in? Are you watching the trends about hate? If you give him 2 years, do you understand what message you are sending to haters in our community that you don't take hate crime seriously? So we upped the offer to 5 years, and Mayfield took that offer. I then, with my lawyers, we appealed that to the 4th District Court of Appeal as an abuse of discretion when this man was looking at 38 years to life because of these strike priors. And the Court of Appeal and Justice Bedsworth, Bill Bedsworth, they overturned Judge Robbins and said that that was an abuse of discretion, that this hate is serious, and this is the poster child for a hater. So I want you to know, not only are we fighting these cases every day, day in and day out, but we are taking these cases up on appeal if we're not getting justice. And I'm very, very proud of the attorneys who got that decision. So now he's poised for trial, and we're going to go for trial, and we're going to try to get him the maximum sentence that we can. So I just want to say this thank you. Thank you. And to the media that's monitoring this call, I know that it's going to be very, very easy just to report how out of control or how hate crime is on the rise. I hope that is not the only message. I hope the message today is that we have the commission, and we have people and staff in this report. We are highlighting this in our county so that we can all come together and do something to fight hate. I'm wearing this ADL button, right, today that says no place for hate. We all believe that. We're not allowing hate to be in Orange County. We don't want it in California. We don't want it anywhere in our nation. Quite frankly, we don't want it in our world. And I'm very, very pleased to be here today, and I'm excited about the presentation. But I say this all the time. If our work hasn't just begun, it will always be ongoing. And we all need everybody to be fighting against hate. It's a noble, worthy cause, and I'm very proud to be in this fight with all of you. So thank you so much for having me today.
Thank you, DA Spitzer, for your presentation and for being here today. With that, I'd like to share that last year, in response to the rising numbers of anti-Asian hate reports that were coming through our office, the OC Human Relations Commission, with the support of the Board of Supervisors, launched the To Know Better OC campaign. The Orange County Human Relations Commission called on students to create an inspiring campaign to stop hateful vibes and wrongful bias fueled by the pandemic. So we received over 150 submissions from schools across Orange County, and 5 student team winners earned $5,000 towards anti-hate initiatives at their schools. Plus, our campaigns are being dropped in Orange County and beyond. So today we wanted to share a video about a video that shows 4 of the 5 winners of the campaign, just to showcase a little bit of what our youth are doing and how inspiring it is.
Orange County students joined the To Know Better campaign to help fight hate and discrimination that arose due to the pandemic. A few of these students joined us to share their perspectives in their own words.
I know that during the pandemic, there was a lot of things going on, like all the negativities, hatreds.
I've seen a lot of violence, and that's so sad to realize that, and a lot of just discrimination towards people.
The Asian hate. It's really painful to see people being treated by that.
I guess I didn't want to believe what I was seeing because I just thought nobody is capable of doing such things, right?
I just really want people to be respectful and understand that respect can go a really long way.
I know it's gonna make a big change if we start thinking from other people's perspective to consider other people's feeling. I think that's really important.
You just have to start respecting yourself and then respecting others.
Words and actions are such an important part. They really affect an individual, a community, a group, a culture. Be thoughtful about what you're saying.
That's the only way we're gonna connect and really make that difference and make that change. I know there's always people saying well, I don't know where to start, I don't know what to do, I don't know how to make a difference. Well, that simple deed of being kind and that simple action of kindness can go a long way.
If someone's having a terrible day, just one small thing you can say to them can really just brighten their day and make them feel really happy.
It doesn't have to be big, just take a little step.
And as long as you keep an open-minded headspace, you're able to understand more people, you're able to be more kind to other people.
Spreading kindness would be the most beneficial way to start making a change and start making a difference.
Someone has to start so that everyone else can learn to take action in their future.
I hope that everybody is feeling inspired after this. We would like to thank all the participants and all of the students that submitted. And we want to thank the OC Human Relations Commission and Board of Supervisors for supporting this amazing effort. And with that, I'm going to hand it over to my colleague, Nee, to lead us through the 2020 Hate Crime Report presentation.
Thank you so much, Norma. Good morning, everyone. Thank you once again for joining us for today's 2020 Orange County Hate Crimes Report release event. My name is Nee. I use she and her pronouns, and I'm the Hate Crime Prevention Coordinator at OC Human Relations. Today, I will provide an overview of the 2020 Orange County hate activity data. The data that we are discussing today have been collected through voluntary submissions. This means that there may also be gaps on the data collected to incidents that go unreported. Secondly, we also want to recognize that hate activity reports were collected from schools, law enforcement agencies, colleges, and the community at large. Please know that this report is a snapshot of hate activities covering all diverse communities across Orange County and should be looked at as a whole to ensure that we lower the prevalence of hate as a collective. We each hold different positionalities based on our intersecting identities, and this can also impact the way we each view the data. Because of these differences and all of our unique lived experiences, we must learn to lean on each other for support and find ways to work together to combat the issues we see. During our time together today, we will also discuss the impact of hate, particularly in Orange County, and how we can come together to combat hate and bigotry in our communities. So as a hate crime prevention coordinator, I work alongside the Orange County Human Relations Commission to seek out the causes of tension and conflict, discrimination and intolerance, and attempt to eliminate those causes. The commission has several duties in the county. This includes hearing the concerns of community members across 34 cities, develop programs to prevent discrimination, track hate activity, and produce an annual report documenting the shifts in hate activities in the county. We produced this report in an effort to raise awareness about hate with the intent in finding solutions in combating hate and bigotry in our communities. Now, before we jump into the introduction to the 2020 hate activity data, it's important to define what is considered a hate crime and what is considered a hate incident. Under California Penal Code Section 422.55, a hate crime is defined as a criminal act committed in whole or in part because of one or more of the following actual or perceived characteristics of someone. This includes someone's perceived or actual disability, their gender identity, nationality, race or ethnicity, religion, sexual orientation, or association with a person or group with one or more of these actual or perceived characteristics. Some examples of hate crimes include assaults, thefts, threats, criminal acts, criminal damage, destruction of property, and murder. And unfortunately, in the past 5 years, hate crimes and hate incidents have only increased in Orange County. And many of the members of our communities have been impacted by all the examples I've just shared. Now, a hate incident is a behavior that is motivated by hate or bias towards a person's actual or perceived disability, their gender identity, nationality, race or ethnicity, religion, sexual orientation, but is not criminal in nature. Typically, these behaviors are protected by the First Amendment right to freedom of expression. So for example, if someone said a racial slur to another person at the park or in front of their house, it's protected by the First Amendment. Now, even though it may be protected under the First Amendment, it does not make it ever okay. And we recognize that hate incidents can often escalate to hate crimes. This is why seeking support and reporting the hate activity, whether you are a witness or if you've been directly impacted, can be so important in prevention efforts. Here, you can see the 10-year trend for hate crimes and hate incidents in Orange County. It also includes the reported activities we received in the past year. In 2020 alone, there were 263 reported hate incidents and 56 hate crimes, 112 hate crimes in the county. Now, to the left in 2010, you'll notice that we had 46 hate incidents and 56 hate crimes reported. It declined a little bit between 2010 to 2011, and the lowest cases of reported hate crimes and hate incidents occurred in 2014, with 14 reported hate incidents and 40 hate crimes reported. But in 2015, we started to see an increase in reported hate activities. It's important to note that these numbers reflect the incidents that have been reported in the county, but for every case that is reported, there are many incidents in our communities that remain unreported. There may be members of our community who hold multiple identities that influence their decisions to report or not report. For example, someone may be undocumented and may not feel safe reporting for a variety of reasons. Another person may be part of the LGBTQ+ community, and because of the violence that some members of the LGBTQ+ community have faced historically, it may not feel safe to report. Along with this, thinking about whether reporting is accessible for those with different abilities or disabilities, language needs, so on and so forth. This also means building trust across different communities and organizations can influence the way we better serve our community as a whole, and in turn, also making support or resources more accessible. Here, you'll find the different types of criminal offense from the past year, with almost half of the reported incidents being vandalism. This includes vandalism at religious sanctions, schools, and neighborhoods in Orange County. And this will also be covered in the full report online. Next slide. The top 3 common places that hate incidents have taken place in Orange County include public areas like parks, private property, residential areas, and college campuses. And unfortunately, in 2021, this was also the case as well. Next slide. The top 3 common places that hate crimes have taken place in Orange County include public areas like parks, private property, residential areas, and places of worships. Now, next slide. There were 12 hate crimes motivated by anti-LGBTQ+ hate in 2020. Of all the hate crimes, 11% of the hate crimes in total were anti-LGBTQ+ motivated. The LGBTQ+ community makes up one of the 3 identity-specific groups targeted for hate in the past year and several years prior. However, it is important to note in 2020, under the LGBTQ+ umbrella, some of the hate activities were specifically targeted towards the trans community in Orange County. More than 1 in 4 trans people have faced a bias-driven assault, and rates are higher in trans women. Hate activities are often also underreported amongst the LGBTQ+ community. Now, in our 2020 analysis, the most reported hate-based criminal offense was anti-Black discrimination in Orange County. Next slide. While the Black community makes up only 2% of the OC population, this community in particular has continued to be a target of hate and violence. Hate crimes targeted towards the Black community had an 88% increase between 2019 to 2020. We saw this continued violence in the community outside of our county as well. Loved ones and community members mourning the loss of their loved ones due to senseless murders, including Breonna Taylor, George Floyd, Ahmaud Arbery, Tony McDade, and so many more. It's important to recognize that anti-Blackness is historically and deeply rooted in laws, housing regulations, which can have a contribution to the 2% noted earlier, and education systems. I think as a community, it really goes without saying that there is a lot of work to be done in our county and across the country. Now, in our 2020 analysis, the second most reported hate-based criminal offense was anti-Semitic discrimination in Orange County. In particular, we received 94 reports of hate incidents related to anti-Semitism. Unfortunately, similar to previous years, there were incidents where hate symbols like the swastika were painted on buildings, properties, and places of religious worship. For many years, the Jewish community have also been one of the communities that have been impacted by many of the hate activities reported in Orange County. It's also important to highlight the long-term historical impacts of anti-Semitism, the impacts of the Holocaust, and the 6 million lives that were lost for the identities they held. Now, the third most reported hate-based criminal offense was anti-Hispanic or Latinx discrimination in Orange County. We received 9 reported hate crimes and 15 reported hate incidents. Some examples of hate that the community members have reported included being called dirty and other uses of racial slurs. The Latinx and Hispanic community have also historically experienced hate and discrimination in the form of forced deportation in the 1920s and 1930s, or separation of as many as 80% of Latinx children in schools in the 1940s. The Asian community is another community group that we wanted to highlight in the general overview today. In the past 10 years, there were about 4 to 5 on average anti-Asian hate-related reports in the county. But in 2020, we received 76 reported hate incidents, an 1,800% increase from the past year. Some reported hate incidents and hate crimes were motivated by both anti-Asian discrimination and COVID-19 anti-Asian rhetoric. Community members have been told to go back home and blamed for bringing COVID. While the reported anti-Asian hate were much lower in Orange County between 2010 to 2019, discrimination and hate experience within the Asian community is not new. And as we reflect on the internment of over 120,000 people of Japanese descent in the 1940s, the Chinese Exclusion Act of 1882, and the deliberate burning of Santa Ana's Chinatown in 1906, we recognize the historical implications as well as we carry over and think about prevention efforts today in 2021. Now, for 2019 versus 2020 comparison, here you'll see a comparison between the reports for both years. In 2020, we received 4 anti-Buddhism hate reports when compared to 0 reports we received in the previous year. 30 anti-Black hate crimes, anti-Black related hate crimes in 2020 compared to 16 in 2019. 76 anti-Asian hate incidents in 2020 compared to 4 reports in 2019. 94 anti-Semitic hate incidents in 2020 compared to 44 reports in 2019. And we also received 6 anti-Arab hate crimes in 2020 compared to 0 reports in 2019. And as we reach the 20 years since the 9/11 attack, we honor the many lives that were lost, the devastating effects on loved ones that day and the days following. And we also acknowledge the anti-Arab and anti-Muslim hate that many communities have experienced in the following years after the event as well. Hate and violence impacted by many members of our community has impacted many members of our community and can look different for those who hold multiple identities as well. Hate and violence prevention will look different for different people, but it can start with reporting something you witness, hear, or have experienced. We are here as a resource to the community, and our reporting options include emailing us at reporthate@ochumanrelations.org, calling the confidential hotline at 714-480-6580, or submitting an online confidential report at ochumanrelations.org/hatecrime/report. Lastly, I want to end with this reminder to everyone here today. Real change is possible. And as a community in Orange County, we can come together to not only advocate for change, but work together to affect change so that we can get closer to a county and a world that is intolerant of violence, of hate, and bigotry. Now I'm going to pass it to Allison for the panelist discussion section.
Thank you, Nee. Thanks for that great presentation. Greetings, everyone. My name is Allie Edwards. I use she, her pronouns. I'm the CEO at the nonprofit organization, the Orange County Human Relations Council. It's our job to prepare this data for the County of Orange each year. And I'm here to share some time with two panelists, Priscilla Huang and Douglas Haynes. Let me briefly introduce you to each of them before we get into our conversation. Priscilla is the founding executive director of the Center for Asian Americans in Action, a nonprofit policy organization that conducts policy analysis, engages in policy advocacy, and strengthens the policy capacity of community organizations to elevate the power and influence of Asian Americans in Orange County and beyond. Priscilla has a background in healthcare policy, health equity, immigrant health coverage, and reproductive and sexual health. She served as a consultant and senior advisor to the White House Initiative on Asian Americans and Pacific Islanders under the Obama administration, and spent over 10 years as a nonprofit advocate in Washington, D.C., working on a variety of federal policy issues impacting Asian American and Pacific Islander communities. Priscilla spends her free time trying to keep up with her two energetic young boys who inspire her to fight for a more just and equitable world. Welcome, Priscilla. Also with me is Dr. Douglas Haynes. He is the inaugural Vice Chancellor for Equity, Diversity, and Inclusion at UC Irvine, as well as their Chief Diversity Officer. He leads a comprehensive effort to establish UCI as a national leader and global model of inclusive excellence. At the core of this aspiration is a campus community where all expect equity, support diversity, practice inclusion, and honor free speech. As Vice Provost for Academic Equity, Diversity, and Inclusion, Dr. Haynes elevated attention to inclusive excellence as an institutional priority. And through the UCI Confronting Extremism initiative, he established a national model for harnessing the research, teaching, and service mission of the university to strengthen the principles of inclusive excellence and to fortify resilience in an age of hyperpolarization. Thank you for joining us, Dr. Haynes.
Thank you, Allison.
So since there are just two of you on the panel today, it means we can have more of a conversation. So I'm hoping that each of you will feel inclined to respond to each of the questions that we've prepared today. So Priscilla, maybe I can ask you to start and give us some insight into how hate activities have impacted the communities that you serve, and how does it feel compared to kind of the national landscape that we're seeing?
Thanks, Allison. Can you give me a thumbs up if you can hear me okay? Okay, great. Thanks so much to you and Norma and to the whole team at OC Human Relations for inviting me to be part of this important launch. You know, the data that was presented was really sobering, obviously, not just for Asian Americans, but across all of the different communities that were covered. But, you know, as you heard from Nee's presentation, the rise and the really abrupt escalation of anti-Asian violence, while not new, given the long history of anti-Asian laws and rhetoric over the years, certainly had a big impact on the many communities that are here in Orange County. As you know, most of the incidents that happened in Orange County happened at different businesses and public spaces where anti-Asian hate crimes and incidents were reported. But I want to highlight also that a lot of the incidents also happened near people's homes, on the sidewalk right in front of their house, by a neighbor, in a neighboring playground. And so, some of the stories that I've heard from folks in Orange County where this happened to, have really, you can imagine the fear and the anxiety of just leaving their homes, right? We usually think of our home as a sacred place, and when even just peeking out a window can trigger a lot of concern and anxiety, especially when you have to leave the home in order to go to work or to go to the store or have other family members leaving. It becomes really traumatizing. And so we heard a lot of that happening. And the other piece too that I want to share is a lot of folks have also told me how the anti-Asian hate incidents and crimes that have happened also triggered a lot of old memories of old traumas from their childhood or from the experiences of their parents. Many of their people of my generation, for example, or myself, I'll speak for myself, we are children of immigrants. So we watched our parents experience a lot of these same hostilities and hostile comments and environments, and never had a space to really process that and what happened to them and to us as children. And I think being so close to seeing all of these incidents happen again, just brings back all of those memories, those unresolved memories of conflict and tension. And so, when these hate crimes and incidents happen to anybody, I think that's, I don't think folks necessarily realize how tied these incidents are to the history, not, for people personally in their own personal experience, but also ties into the history of oppression and trauma for different groups as a whole. So all of this is to say, it's been a challenging year. It's been a very difficult year for a lot of Asian Americans. I think we've seen, as part of the response to that, a huge surge in requests for mental health services that, quite frankly, a lot of the community-based organizations can't keep up with. There are long waiting lists. And so, I appreciate having this opportunity to highlight some of that and talk about that with this panel.
Yeah, thank you so much for sharing that. And I know that it can be tempting at these times to want to view each of these activities as isolated or just bad actors. But we really are called to continue to tie this back to larger systems, larger events, to make sure that we can respond, in that same way. So thank you for calling that out. Dr. Haynes, you serve the community of UCI, but many communities are served in that process. Tell us how you see impact from your perspective.
Well, thank you, Allison. I just want to acknowledge the wonderful work of Priscilla and our organization. I think it's an indication that we're stronger as a community when we have very attentive non-for-profits that are really about creating a more positive community. I think that this matters a great deal to our campus. We serve about 50,000 people who work and learn at UCI, in Irvine and at Orange, and in various facilities across the campus. And the data is sobering, to use Priscilla's word, because so many communities have been and are impacted. And, it's not just the individual incident that's reported or the crime that is ultimately, that results in a conviction. It's the lingering effects that remain. It really forms a part of the memory, the cultural memory. And one thing that was quite, I think, noteworthy is that the data shows that there's two narratives about Orange County. One narrative is very much, I believe, a 21st century narrative, that we are a very diverse county. Over half are people of color, which is quite different in 1965 when the campus was founded, or 1992 when I joined the faculty. And so I think that's evidence for real, I think, progress and pride. And yet at the same time, what's striking is that we have a 20th century problem, the data show, in terms of anti-Semitism, anti-Asian, anti-Black discrimination of various forms. And I think that for those reasons, it really reminds me of the importance of not only this report, right? Because if you don't know, it's hard to put your experience in a context, right? I think what it also shows is the importance of entities like the OC Human Rights Commission, but also the need for a more ambitious approach right? We're learning so much about the past 2 years that hate, discrimination, anti-Semitism, Islamophobia, homophobia, transphobia, you name it, exist in Orange County. And I think, therefore, it's really imperative that we think about a broad equity plan and strategy, right? Because I do think that each incident, I think, limits our capacity to truly become that national model of a diverse county. And I just want to add that what's particularly distressing about the data, and I want to be very clear in acknowledging all forms of offenses that affect different communities, it's just distressing to see that year over year, the Black community in Orange County is disproportionately among the victims of hate incidents and certainly crimes, right, which is a far more serious expression of hate. And to put it in context, there's about 3 million people in Orange County. African American or Black people represent around 65,000. And so when a person experiences an incident or a crime, it has an outsized impact. Our numbers are simply too small to try to do it ourselves. And that's why I think for this community and other communities, having a more comprehensive plan that really focuses on culture, because hate is as much about culture as it is about law enforcement.
Yeah, I appreciate that. One of the things we're hoping to talk about is what that intersectional approach can look like. And before we dive into that, wanted to hear from each of you how you're responding through your position and through your organization. Dr. Haynes, you called out a number of things like anti-Semitism, transphobia, Islamophobia that exist in our world and our communities, and certainly are therefore reflected in our institutions. So I'm curious to hear from each of you, how are your organizations responding to what you've seen this year, and this rise in particular?
I'll defer to you, Priscilla.
No problem. Thank you. So at least for our organization, in response to the anti-Asian hate, discrimination and hate crimes, obviously the first thing that we would do is to really make sure that the individual, to really support the victim, right? Most important is the victim's safety, making sure that they're connected to different social and legal support services. And there's an incredible network, I have to say, of community-based organizations in Orange County that have been serving Asian American and immigrant Latinx communities for decades. And they stepped up very quickly to provide a lot of these services, in addition to responding, I have to say, to the ongoing COVID pandemic. If you're interested in knowing about these groups, please reach out to me, but they're incredible. For our organization, since we are primarily focused on systems change, using policy advocacy as a tool for system change, we really wanted to take some of what's happening and to really try to push for some changes at the systems level. So one of the things that we did was we had an opportunity to work with Supervisor Bartlett and Supervisor Doe's office on a Board of Supervisor resolution that was introduced early this year, and to really embed actually some actionable items, right? We wanted to focus on not just addressing anti-Asian hate, but we intentionally crafted language in there that would create a inclusive stakeholder engagement process and a series of listening sessions that I think many of the folks hopefully listening in participated in, that was convened by the OC Human Relations Commission. We very much see that the solution to preventing anti-Asian hate is the same solution that is needed to prevent anti-Black violence and anti-Semitism, and anti-LGBTQ discrimination. So we wanted all stakeholders from all of these groups involved, and so that's deliberately written into that resolution language. On the city level, we also saw an opportunity to at least create an opportunity for dialogue among the various city councils that we have here in Orange County. So we crafted a model city resolution and issued a challenge to all of the city councils in Orange County to adopt an anti-Asian hate resolution or a proclamation in support of Asian American residents and community members within the jurisdiction. And we're proud that 15 cities took up that challenge and have passed these types of resolutions. And so, the work is certainly not over, but it was, hopeful and helpful to create to institutionalize some of this more welcoming language, some more inclusive language at the city and county levels to really show and signal support for the many communities that live here.
Mm-hmm. Wow.
And your support and advocacy was definitely deeply felt by the Human Relations Commission and the ability to really draw public attention to these issues in not just, as you said, not just the Asian American community, Priscilla, but sort of how we can approach these things together. So I just, also want to appreciate how engaged your organization and many others were in that process and really being able to create movement on the issue. Dr. Haynes, what does response look like right now at UCI?
That's a really good question, and I want to acknowledge the important work of Priscilla and our organization across the county. I think first and foremost, we should acknowledge that we're learning, that in some sense, this is a novel moment in time. It may feel familiar, but in some ways it's very new. And we sort of see that in terms of how organizations respond. And so what we've tried to do consistently when it comes to inclusive excellence is to engage with it, right? And so one thing we try to do is to name the incident or the crime, right? And not to see it as necessarily aberrant, as exceptional, right? That in some sense, America doesn't have a race problem, it has a problem with racism, okay? And so very often I'm communicating and messaging to the entire UCI community. And of course, this has increased over the course of the last 24 months, right? As these incidents have spiked and have become even more spectacular in their effects. I think another thing that we really have grown and developed is promoting understanding, right? And so it's not enough to be a diverse campus or county. People need to have the opportunity to understand about the communities that comprise Orange County and UCI. And so education is a profoundly important part. And it's not just the formal education for degree granting, right? It's a certificate program that we have, the Inclusive Excellence Certificate Program for staff employees, faculty employees, undergraduates and graduate students and alums and the community. And the idea is that we need to learn more about each other so that we can better appreciate what these incidents and crimes mean. But more than that, there are opportunities to learn about tools for reporting, tools for self-protection, tools for being an authentic ally. I think as we sort of responded to the racial reckoning, we mounted a suite of modules on anti-Blacks in the United States. And the reason why is that we learned that one effect of the recorded killing of George Floyd and the response is that many people wanted to do something, They just didn't know why or what or how. And so these modules in anti-Blacks in the United States is really designed to meet people where they are, right? Where they can feel psychologically safe to learn and, yes, make mistakes. Right? I think that the third and final thing is that we must learn about the vulnerability that we all are feeling as a result of COVID. We have to learn from that. And as we return to in-person, whether at our campus at UCI, in our businesses, in our non-for-profits, in our countywide community, we should learn from that, right? We should learn that together we're stronger, that we can do far better when we're in it together, and that I'm as interested in the success and thriving of members of the LGBT community, the Jewish community, the Asian Pacific Islander community, as I am in the Black and African American community. But it takes understanding, equipping, and being open to change.
Thank you. We have a few minutes left, and you've both just given me lots of food for thought as we think about how we look forward and how we move forward. Some of the things in my mind are thinking about, of course, what does an intersectional movement look like? Also thinking about the balance of, how do we call people in, but how do we still stay authentic and think about accountability? And how do we create spaces where people feel like they can make those mistakes, but be brave and continue forward. We know that things like anti-Blackness affect all of us, and that we can all be sort of sucked into that system of believing these falsehoods when we are not engaged in that kind of education that pushes back against anti-Blackness. What does that look like? How do we create that movement that addresses these things and attempts to accomplish all these many things simultaneously? What are your thoughts? Not that you have asked you to share the secret answer with us. I know that doesn't exist, but what things come to mind for you? Like, what are the qualities that you see, or what are some of the boundaries you set? What does the container look like for success in this process?
That is an amazing question, Allison, because I think everyone brings the best of intentions. The hard part is translating that into action. And I think first and foremost, this is where existing organizations can play a very powerful role. So for example, Priscilla's organization, if individuals are interested in learning more about what one can do to be in solidarity, and this is the important part, in support of Asian Pacific Islander communities, go to a trusted resource, right? I'm sure our inclination is to want to do it ourselves, to act on our intuition. And sometimes that works, but in other cases, it can really create adverse consequences. And so there's so much information now. And so I would just say, first, learn. Number two, engage with trusted community resources. And third, you don't have to be a superhero. No one is asking you to put your health at risk, your life at risk, your job at risk, your family at risk, right? But just be in community. And so I'm sure that's not the right answer, but I think it's the answer that I think that I can produce right now.
Thank you.
I completely agree with Dr. Haynes's comments. And, he has so much wisdom about how to build community and to do it intentionally and to do it in a way that centers the voices that are most impacted, because they are the folks who will tell you and at least guide you towards a better solution, right? I think I will just say that in observing a lot of the well-intentioned efforts to support Asian American communities, sometimes, right, the intention is good, but the impact of overstepping when you are not an affected community member can, that can put us back a few steps in towards building solidarity and partnerships in a meaningful way and in a long-term way. I want to share an example of something that happened here in Orange County that I think, it really moved me, and it's made me think. I think back on this incident, every so often in a way to try to think about how we start from our own, homes and neighborhoods as a way of maybe trying to build more of this, more of the heart that's needed in the center of these communities. So, Ali, I think I actually met you for the first time in Ladera Ranch at the beginning of this year. There was a Chinese family, a Chinese American family that had moved to Ladera Ranch. And for, I think it was September of 2020, and for 5 continuous months, every night, they were harassed by a group of young people in the neighborhood. And it wasn't just a ding dong ditch situation. It was starting around dinner time through, sometimes past midnight, pounding on the front door, throwing rocks at the windows, leaving pornographic material. The family put up, gates around their yard. They put up cameras. Both of the parents, they have 3 children in the household. The children were so scared that they couldn't fall asleep, so they would all sleep together in one room, and the parents started taking turns basically patrolling their front yard to try to prevent more of these incidents happening. A lot of yelling of anti-Asian related slurs. And, it was obviously creating a really traumatic environment for the entire family, and the parents were exhausted. They were having to do this every single night for 5 months. And finally, one of their neighbors started to learn about that this was happening consistently, and the neighborhood set up a neighborhood watch. And literally, it was a group of 3, 4, and expanded to many other people in the neighborhood who, they also had the rocks thrown at them at certain points, but at least it gave the family some peace. They were able to eat their dinner together without being interrupted, and kind of go back to some normalcy. And then later on, the community wanted to do more. They wanted to show that this family was welcome. And it happened to be around the Lunar New Year, and they decided to throw a lantern festival to, again, really show that the community as a whole was really welcoming to this family. And I attended the Lantern Festival. It was incredible, I have to say. At one point, I was watching the lion dancers, and I was remembering my own childhood experience of being terrorized, I'll just say, by living in a neighborhood where we were the only Asian family, and many things happening to our home as well. And it was a memory that I had not surfaced in decades. And when I saw this community come together and really reclaim this space, that, literally the park and the sidewalk where so much of these hate incidents were happening, and really reclaiming that space for this family in a very, culturally relevant and appropriate way, where hundreds of people came to support them. It was incredible. And it was, one of those things that I wish someone had done that for us when we were kids and my parents were just starting in this country. And so I would love for that to happen, more of those types of things to happen in our communities in Orange County as well.
Yeah, that was a wonderful event. We were so pleased to be included in that. And just on a personal level, I brought my own, then I think 6 and 8 year old to that. And so, and they were feeling pretty impacted by 2020 and confused. And it was just a great opportunity to share what community can look like for folks. And it was uplifting for them, even though they weren't sure of all the details. I didn't tell them everything, but so those effects often go even farther than one might calculate, in the organization of it. So I appreciate you sharing that story too. It was very meaningful. It's time for us to close out our conversation, but I just want to make sure I give space to each of you if you have sort of like a final thought or comment that you'd like to share.
I'll just add that about 2 weeks ago, I wrote a column for Forbes entitled "America the Unsafe," and I sort of listed so many vulnerable communities across the country. And I think events like this that brings together community, that connects different stakeholders, is so important to create a greater sense of well-being. It really communicates to affected communities that they actually matter. And I'll just, repeat something I mentioned earlier. I'm convinced that this county has the capacity to do more as a county. What we really need is a larger plan and strategy. I think that it remains baffling that we are so diverse, and yet we are still contending with increases in hate incidents and crimes. But I am convinced that we have the capacity as a community to really improve.
I appreciate you bringing your optimism to us today, Dr. Haynes. Priscilla, closing thought, if you like, not required.
Yeah, I think my closing thought is that we can't shy away from talking about race. I think it's the same message that Dr. Haynes and Allison, you and Norma and your team are fulfilling this important work. It's uncomfortable, it's difficult. It's uncomfortable for people of color too, but I'm a policy person, so I like to get into specific issues, but I'll just say I worry a lot about the very public debates we're having at the school district levels around ethnic studies and critical race theory. And this, I interpret it as fear from some parents who oppose this type of curriculum, when really it is really trying to help students develop a framework for talking about racism and diversity and inclusion, and to do it at an early age, so that you don't go through a lifetime of not being able to have the language to talk about these issues that are so fundamental to who we are as individuals and who we are as communities. So that's where I will end. Thank you.
So thank you both so much for being with us today. It's so meaningful to have you here. These are not events that are always easy to find hope and find optimism. So I appreciate your contributions today, and certainly even more so for the work you're doing day in and day out to support the people of Orange County. Thank you so much. I'll turn it back to, I think, to Norma on the commission. Thank you.
Thank you, Ali. And I want to thank our panelists for sharing their experiences, insights, and for their commitment to anti-hate work. As we digest the data that Nee has shared with us today and digest the conversations that just happened, we want to take the opportunity to think about what comes next. And how do we continue these conversations and turn them into action? We would like to engage with you in a Hope for OC activity. But before we do that, we want to share a short video of what some of the members of our community had to say about their hopes for Orange County.
At the start of the pandemic in 2020, I had encountered several instances of verbal public ridicule from people directing China virus comments at me. While my experience will never compare to those who endured physical harm due to anti-Asian sentiments, there are still emotional scars to be healed. In public, I refrained from making eye contact with people in fear of provoking them to physically harm me. I developed a fear of meeting new people, unsure how they really felt about me as an Asian American.
My name is Megan Yu Schneider, and I was born and raised in Southern California. And I'm happy and proud to be a part of the Orange County community. In terms of hate activities in our community, I think we can all relate to so many different incidents, whether they've happened to us personally or whether we've been unfortunate witnesses of such incidents. But today, I really want to highlight the importance of recognizing that while outward acts of physical violence and verbal hostile attacks are absolutely horrific and leave an impact on us, it's also important to recognize what an impact everyday acts of microaggressions have on us. It's extremely draining, it's extremely isolating, and even something as innocuous as assuming that English is our second language, if we say that we're bilingual, can be hurtful and othering. I grew up bilingual, and I remember having to take an ESL test when my mom indicated that I was fluent in both English and Korean. Both my parents immigrated here at a very young age, and I was born and raised here. And so English and Korean were both my first language. But throughout my life, whenever I mentioned that I spoke both English and Korean, there were assumptions that either I was born in Korea or that I wasn't fluent in English. Additionally, it's important to recognize other acts of microaggressions, whether it's assuming that we're not from here, or whether it's simply making little comments about how exotic or how different or how unique our foods are, or our lived experiences. Or oftentimes I get asked, what's it like back in Korea? And there's an assumption that the living conditions are different, or there's an assumption that somehow I know everything about my parents' home country because I am of Korean heritage. And those assumptions can be hurtful. Those assumptions are absolutely othering, and it makes a lot of situations different.
My hope for Orange County is that we develop compassion. We practice kindness towards one another. We teach our children not just to open their minds, but to also open their hearts to learning about others. Indulge in new cuisines. We're in a melting pot. Attend a cultural event. Ask a neighbor about their traditions and their history. Everyone has a story to tell. Smile at somebody in passing. Say hello. We all have the power to unite the 3 million people who live in this melting pot that we call home. So let's bring our community together, one community member at a time. And it starts with you.
My hope is that Orange County can be a place where folks feel like they belong, that people are able to be their full, authentic selves. that we're able to honor and celebrate both the things we have in common and the things that make us unique. I want Orange County to be a place that centers community, love, and joy.
My hope or vision for the Orange County community as a lifelong resident and as a proud member of the community, I'm honored to serve as an elected official representing our county as the first Asian American elected official on the board for the Municipal Water District of Orange County. It's also unfortunate that I am the first, given that this water district has served our community for over 70 years. But I take my responsibility to heart and recognize the value that I bring in the different perspectives that I bring to the table and the different lived experiences I bring to the table. And it is my hope and vision that we can continue to grow in our representation of reflecting our community in the policy bodies that serve our communities, and in creating an inclusive and open and warm and loving community of the diversity that makes our community incredible, and honoring the differences that we bring to the table and recognizing how we can all benefit from creating more equitable opportunities for all of us. We are truly better together, and I am hopeful for a future where we can continue to create a better community for all of us and where we can create an inclusive community for all of us.
My name is Valerie. I've lived in Orange County for 13 years. My hope for the Orange County community is that we move from learning about racism to actively being anti-racist. We have spent so many years, so many decades, so many generations learning about racism, learning about bigotry, wondering if that really happens here in our county. And the answer is yes. Racism has always existed in Orange County. Discrimination has always existed in Orange County. Bigotry has always existed in Orange County. And in the past, we let it happen. But today we can do something about it. We can choose to take our learning and apply it in our interactions with others who look different than us, racially, ethnically, those who speak different languages, those born in other countries, those who have a faith that's different than ours, or love differently than we would love, or believe in a political ideology that's different than ours. We can choose today to actively fight hate in all its forms. My hope for Orange County community is that we sit there and take that brave step forward, that we actively do something the next time we hear a derogatory word, or see somebody treat somebody with less than respect, or hear a microaggression, or see violence based on identity. My hope is that the Orange County community recognizes that community means all of us, not some, not those that look just like us, but community is all of us in all of our differences here in Orange County, working to have a good life, to be happy, to be safe, to be valued, to be known as being worthy just simply because we were born. So my hope for the Orange County community is that we actively apply all that we have learned in the last decades, the last year, from the readings we've done, the dialogues we've engaged in, the documentaries we've watched, and just from our own self-reflection, that we step forward bravely to make Orange County a place where all of us want to be and can be, in love and in safety.
So we are 2 minutes shy from the end of our event, and there is an activity that we do want to introduce, and we will leave it open while we wrap up. So we're going to ask folks to join us in a Jamboard. Jamboard is a interactive ways for us to be able to connect with each other in real time. So what we want to do is I'm going to drop the link for the Jamboard in the chat. If you could follow the link, I'm going to screen share here. this will open up. We have two different boards. So the first board focuses on resources. So what are some resources that you know of in Orange County that community members should know about? And the way that you're able to contribute is here on the left, you'll be able to see it says sticky notes, this little square. If you click on it, a simulation of a sticky note pops up. You're able to type on it, save it, and it'll pop up here. So you can contribute as many as you'd like. Similarly, there's a second board. So if you go to the top of the screen, there's this little square that says 1 of 2. If you hit the arrow on the right, it says next frame, it'll take you to the second vision board. And this vision board is about vision and hope. So we would like for you to share with us your hope or your vision for the Orange County community. So what we're gonna do is we're gonna leave this up, get as interactive as possible. We'll close it out probably 10-15 minutes after the event. But what we're going to do is we're going to use this information, we're going to gather it, and then we're going to share it out with all the attendees in an email after the event. And then in that email, you'll receive the links to the report, to some of the videos that were shared today, and other resources. So with that, I hope that you're able to engage with us in the Jamboard. And with that, we're at 10:30. I'd like to hand it over to Nee to lead us into the wrap up and closing.
Thank you so much, Norma. And thank you so much to our panelists for joining us today and attendees for their questions and attendance. OCHR will also have an upcoming OC Together dialogue taking place in October, and you're welcome to join. Maureen will also drop that link again in the chat. And if you would like to access the entire report, you can check the commission page as well. And that will also be in the chat. And now I'm going to pass it over to the commission chair, Joanne Matsuba, to provide the closing statement.
Oh, thank you. I just would like to express my deepest gratitude to our speakers today, to Priscilla Huang and Dr. Douglas Haynes, Go Anteaters.
Yeah.
And also to Todd, District Attorney Todd Spitzer. Also, sorry for the technical difficulties that we weren't able to join with Supervisor Doug Chafee today, but we know he's out there somewhere and supportive. And also the biggest shout out to the Orange County Human Relations Council. Nee, thank you for presenting the information today, and to the entire team that put this event together. I'd also like to thank all that took their time to attend this event, to hear about the hate crimes data release and know what's going on in Orange County. There's still a lot of work for us to do. However, as we heard and listened to and worked to hear today, we can continue to come together as one to make real changes in our community. We look forward to working together with you to make Orange County an equitable, inclusive county where we can all feel comfortable. And just thank you to the council once again for putting this together. Ali, thank you so much. And we look forward to working with you again and seeing you again. Thanks so much.